Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're jumping right into a super specific, hands-on technique that's designed to help us totally bypass our adult critical minds and finally break through those stubborn mental blocks. If you've ever felt like your own brain is literally getting in the way of your personal growth, well, you're in the exact right place. We're going to explore a really fascinating physical hack to reach the absolute deepest parts of ourselves. Let's get into it.
So, let's start off with a question I think we all ask ourselves at some point. Why can't we just outsmart our own pain? It's incredibly frustrating, right? I mean, we read the books, we logic our way through our problems, and we white-knuckle it with sheer willpower. And yet, logic and willpower alone almost always fail to fix our recurring patterns of self-sabotage or, that quiet, persistent ache we all kind of carry around. The truth is, you just can't outthink an emotional wound.
The source material actually calls this the perennial struggle. You know that famous quote from Henry David Thoreau, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." It perfectly captures this lifelong tension between our light and shadow, our desires and our fears, and who we are right now versus who we desperately want to be. But here's the biggest takeaway right up front. Feeling this tension absolutely does not mean you're broken. You're just experiencing the normal human condition. The goal isn't to magically cure it, but to learn how to actually work with it.
All right, Section 1, Parts of Yourself.
To figure out exactly why we feel so stuck and how to start working through it, we kind of have to zoom into our psychological wiring. Your personality isn't just one solid, unchanging block. In transactional analysis, they use this framework called ego states. And actually, scratch that. They aren't just metaphors. These are actual physical neural pathways in your brain that dictate your mood and behavior. They're broken down into the parent, the adult, and the child. We slide in and out of these different states completely unconsciously all day long, and they're nested inside each other, almost like those Russian matryoshka dolls.
When you break it down, your parent state can be that nagging inner critic, or it can be super nurturing. Your adult, that's your pure logic. It's rational, organized, and totally unemotional. And the child state is where all of your vulnerability, imagination, and anxiety live. So here's where we run into trouble. We almost always try to use our rational adult or our critical parent states to fix our deep emotional child wounds. That is literally the worst tool for the job. You cannot logic away a feeling of abandonment or fear.
Moving on to Section 2, Meeting the Inner Child.
Because we can't use our logical adult to fix an emotional problem, we've got to focus specifically on that child ego state. Think back to when you were a kid. Those unresolved needs for love, for safety, they don't just magically vanish when you turn 18. They stick around and they trigger anxiety, fear, and shame that can affect us for our entire lives. If you find yourself dealing with persistent emotional issues or repeating destructive patterns as an adult, that's a huge neon sign. It means your vulnerable inner child desperately needs your attention and care to heal.
Which brings us to Section 3, the non-dominant hand hack.
So how in the world do we actually talk to this inner child when our highly developed, super logical adult brain just wants to judge everything we do? Well, the source material gives us this brilliant, granular physical hack using your non-dominant hand. If you're right-handed, grab a pen with your left hand. By forcing yourself to physically write or draw with the hand you never use, you entirely bypass your adult critical faculties. Yes, your handwriting is going to look like a kindergartner's, and honestly, that is exactly the point. You want to lean into that clumsiness. That vulnerability is the secret sauce.
Think about the total contrast here. It's night and day. Your dominant hand, that represents your adult state. It's logical, critical, a total perfectionist, and usually wearing a mask to fit in with society. But your non-dominant hand represents the child. It is inherently vulnerable, it's messy, and it is 100% authentic. Just by simply switching hands, you short-circuit that nasty inner critic who demands perfection, and you finally allow your true, unfiltered emotions to bubble up to the surface.
Let's look at Section 4, Dialogue, Letters, and Art.
So how do you actually turn this into a daily practice? You've got a few really awesome options. First off, you can write unsent letters to process past pain. Again, using that non-dominant hand so the raw emotion actually comes through. Second, you could try a 30-day drawing challenge. Just grab some crayons, use bright, playful colors, and draw whatever comes to mind without judging it. And finally, you can do a written dialogue between your different ego states, which is honestly maybe the most profound exercise of the whole bunch. Here's the exact breakdown for that two-handed dialogue. First, you take your dominant hand and write out a question or a supportive statement. That's your calm, curious adult speaking. Then, and this is the magic part,
You switch the pen to your wrong hand and write the reply. That's your child responding. You are literally mapping your psychology onto your physical body. Your adult mind asks the question, and your inner child physically answers back. Then you just sit with whatever feelings come up and integrate those insights.
Now here is the absolute most crucial thing to remember. The goal here is not perfection, not even close. When you see that wobbly, chaotic handwriting or those messy drawings from your non-dominant hand, do not judge them. Embrace how perfectly imperfect they are. It's exactly that clumsiness that gives your work depth and authenticity. It's what allows for real self-expression and ultimately real healing.
Okay, finally, Section 5, Integrating Your Authentic Self. All right, let's zoom back out for a second. What's the end game of scribbling with our wrong hand? The whole goal here is to give yourself the love, care, and support that your inner child maybe missed out on in the past. You're basically reparenting yourself. By giving a physical voice to these hidden parts of you and validating them without any judgment, you integrate that childlike vulnerability right alongside your capable adult mind. And that integration, that is how you finally uncover the roots of your pain and actually move forward.
There's this amazing quote from Dr. Lucia Capacchione. The discovery of the inner child is really the discovery of a portal to the soul. I mean, talk about a game changer, right? This inner child work isn't just some neat psychological party trick, it's a massive, profound journey. It keeps us human. Doing this uncomfortable, messy work is what leads to real self-compassion and brings you right back to your truest, most authentic self.
So that leaves us with one really big important question for you to ponder. What is your inner child trying to tell you right now? You know, there's a part of you holding on to old fears, sure, but it's also holding on to pure joy and wonder. Do not let your inner critic silence it for another minute. Go grab a pen, put it in the wrong hand, and find out. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.